So today I thought I would talk a bit about the big picture of the allotments. Not a detailed tour or anything like that, not a video of me cropping or making something, just what allotments mean to me and where they fit into my life and the kind of design of the 3 allotments and the kitchen garden. So what do they mean to me? Well, I retired 2 years ago. I retired for health reasons, and the allotments have pretty much cured me. And I put it down to being out in the fresh air, moving around all day, eating just loads of really nutritious fruit and veg, and just working with the soil, basically. The microbiome of the soil, all the bacteria and fungus and all that sort of thing, which we evolved surrounded by that. And I'm back now with my hands in the soil, eating minimally washed fruit and veg, if washed at all. So it, when you've been cured from a pretty debilitating chronic illness, it means a lot. What else does it mean? Well, when I retired, just before I retired, I was working 4 hours a day for 4 days a week. And when I retired, I wanted something to take the place of that work, and pretty much designed the allotments around that idea. So not a huge time commitment, because I still wanted lots of time for reading, visiting friends and family, hiking, cycling, just all the things that I love doing. But I did want something to give me kind of, purpose, and as I say, fill some time. And the allotments have just done that splendidly. Now, we have designed our allotments specifically, to meet, to be able to work within that time commitment. And that's not to say that that's all we do, because occasionally we'll work on projects and things like that. But the kind of mandatory amount of time, about 16 hours a week for all 3 plots. With that introduction, I'll just show you around the 3 plots and how they all fit together and how they work. Okay, so this is the entrance to the plot, and here's my car, and here's the lodge and the toilet, and my plot is just down this little green drive, which, if you follow along on my tour videos, you'll see me walking up and down many times. Now, the reason that I really love this plot is because it's just so central. It's like at the heart of the community life of the allotment, and I really love that about it. People are always walking past. I can see the entrance from my plot. It's just great. So as you walk in, this is kind of the work area. This is the engine room, as they say, of the allotment. Massive compost bins here, 3 of which, when it's going well, are all full. Every week or so they get turned into the empty bin, and then the whole process reverses and they get turned into the empty bin at the end. And after a few months of doing that, the resulting compost goes into these bins, where it sits for a few months finishing, and then it's ready to use. So this is the first plot that we got, and so it started off with a bit of everything, and it's kind of continued that way. Eventually we're going to have fruit trees down here. We've got raspberries and we've got gooseberries all the way around the outside, and that's just great. So it's sort of all bordered by fruit trees. We've got these narrow beds that I put brassicas and onions and things like that in, and I've got another one there. And then got a few bits and pieces, some apple trees, and a couple of open beds just for things like kale, and most of the brassicas and things are grown on Jennie's plot. We'll see that in a minute. But most of my plot is these coal frames. Didn't start out that way, I just started off with raised beds, but very quickly I realised these coal frames are just great. The wind comes from the high end of the coal frame, so they actually provide quite a lot of shelter. The sun comes from the low end, so they get plenty of sunlight, and that combination of loads of sun and shelter just really works well. Now, the reason that I went for these coal frames is because it was a pretty cheap way to get started, and I basically wanted the allotments to be cost neutral, i.e., we would pay for the investments in the allotment from the value of the crops that we harvested, and that's the way it's been running now. We're running a nice surplus, and so that's been really good. I think on another video I'll talk about allotment finances. Now, the great thing about these coal frames, of course, is that they allow me to vent each one individually to suit the needs of the crops that are in them. So that's really good. I can get maximum sunlight when I want to. It's really easy to harvest from them because I can just open them up like I've opened this one up. I can have minimal venting or maximum venting. It's just really flexible. Then in spring I take the lids off and basically it's just all open beds. So in the winter it's all closed beds. In the summer it's all open beds, and in the middle it's vented beds that sit like this one here, but they can be closed up completely. Now, when I need a bit more space, I will use these hoop tunnels. So in there at the moment are my French beans, which should crop beyond the first frost because I can keep them frost free in there. And I've still got a few open beds for things like the asparagus, and then netted frames. Now, the netted frames I've currently got carrots and parsnips in mostly, and some leeks over there. And then I've got my bean frame, which next year is kind of going to be a little food forest, everything climbing, so cucumbers, tomatoes, and a whole range of spinaches and all sorts of different things. Hopefully about 10 different climbing veggies going to be growing on that, rather than just beans, because we've got plenty of beans elsewhere. I've got my little greenhouse over there, which gets used all year round because I start almost everything from seed in plugs and then plant out when it's mature. And I've got my hotbeds, so I've just built this one, and I used that one last year, and fill these with compost at the end of January, and then in February they get planted, and they turn February into May inside, and so they've worked splendidly, and it's just amazing to see everything powering away in February and March when everybody else on the allotments has just got bare soil. So that is the big picture of my plot. Now, you'll see that the paths are really big. I just, having spent quite a bit of my time on crutches, I wanted loads of space, making it really easy to walk around, kneel down, do the weeding, use the wheelbarrow and all of that sort of thing. All the side paths are a bit narrower, but they're still big enough to get a wheelbarrow down. I've got a hose pipe because I need to do a lot of watering. We're not too far away from the tap here. I've got my cropping table, and that's today's crop on there. I've just done a video actually of the crop, so I won't go into any details on that, but if you want, there'll be a link in the show notes for this video. And I've got my little shed, which is just fantastic, even though it is kind of falling down with rot, but I inherited it and I'm not going to get rid of it until I really need to, because I really like it. It's got everything in it that I need, and I've got my water butts, and I need a lot of water on this allotment. So there we go, big picture. So let's move on. So just a few steps down the green drive is Debbie's plot, my wife. and Debbie is semi-retired, and so we wanted to give her a space that was all her own, so she could do it exactly as she wanted to, because she didn't want to do it anything like mine. But what we wanted to do was make sure that it was really low maintenance. It was in a terrible state when we got it, and so we'd put a lot of effort into keeping it weed free, especially in areas like the orchard area and the fruit area and things like that. So I think she has done this plot almost all on her own, and she's done an absolutely splendid job. So basically, big picture here is, again, great little shed that Debbie has renovated superbly. Cropping bench and workbench down in the corner, and then an orchard area in the centre, cherry trees and apple trees and raspberries and plums and pears over in the far corner, and then all manner of currants in the centre and a few raspberries and blackberries, and then raised beds. And she plants these ornamentally, as you can see, so they look really fantastic. And you know, the focus here is kind of ornamental productivity, and you know, the focus of mine is productivity. So there we go. I'm so proud of this plot. I think it's really lovely, and of course it's nice and small, but we needed a bit of extra space because we family and friends eat a lot of potatoes and lots of brassicas and onions and garlic and all of that sort of thing. So fortunately, my daughter also wanted an allotment. So let's go take a look. So back at the entrance to the site, and we're just walking to the right now. So it's not very far from my plot. In fact, it's, you know, probably a minute's walk, although I do normally go on a shortcut through one of my friends' allotments, which makes it even quicker. Now, Jennie's plot is very traditional. Basically, big beds, all soil. We put this little grassed area in here for a little boy Robin to play on, and you know, more beds and a fantastic shed which faces near enough south, and so it's currently being used for drying. Okay, so big picture, basically beans, brassicas, onion, alliums and potatoes and trees. So that's kind of the focus if you've got 4 beds. So this is the orchard area, and it's going to have quite a few more trees in there soon, but that's currently the orchard area. At the moment this bed is alliums, beans, brassicas, beans, brassicas, onions next year, broad beans, squash, there'll be squash next year, and more brassicas with a few raspberries and beans there. So this is where we grow. Basically, I think of it as we grow for the larder here, you know, for the storeroom, and it's worked really well. So as you can see, we manage the 3 plots as if there were one massive plot. There's no point, you know, with the 3 of us all growing the same things and whatever. So we just manage the whole thing as one, and we all eat from all 3, as well as providing loads of food to friends and family. So there we go. That's the big picture of our little allotment empire. And just as you can see here, we're just doing a lot of tidy up down here. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed that, because sometimes it's difficult to follow you know, how all these different allotments all fit together. and how we manage them. So that gives you a good idea.